All right, so today we have brought on Jenny, one of our success stories from our private Facebook group. And before we started recording, I was telling her that she's a bit of a unicorn because she didn't follow the exact strategy with no contact. And she's one of those rare people that got her ex back. And so we're going to basically sit down with her for 35 to 45 minutes and just interview her and figure out what she did to successfully get her ex back. And by her own admission, it seems like she still can't believe she got him back, which is kind of awesome. But how are you doing, Jenny?
I'm doing great. I'm glad it's Friday. The sun is shining today, so having a really good day.
Yeah, hopefully the rain, we were talking a little bit. You said the weekend looks like it's going to be a bit rainy on your in your side of the states, but
Mhm.
hopefully, sometimes the weatherman can get it wrong.
We need a little bit of rain for some flowers, so I'm okay with it.
That's true. My grass is dying outside because of a lack of rain. So I'm hoping it rains. But yeah, anyways, why don't you take me back to the beginning? Give me like a little bit of a briefing on your past relationship with your ex, because you had mentioned before we started recording that it was a little bit rocky a couple of times before.
Yeah, we've had it has not been a perfect relationship. We've been together almost 3 years now. And last summer, we actually made the decision for him to move in with me. And during that time that he lived with me, that's when the pandemic happened. So not only were we first living together for the first time, but then we were kind of forced to stay together for a long
Yeah.
time. During that time, there was kids involved, his kids, my kids, and then so it just got really rocky really fast. And so he actually ended up moving out and getting his own place, but we ultimately decided to stay together still, which it was like taking a step backward to take a step forward. And then I think it was about a month or so ago, we were just having a conversation, and at one point during the conversation, he was just like, I can't do this anymore. And it took me, I was completely blindsided. I didn't understand, like, what do you mean? Like, you can't do this anymore? Like, we were just fine a couple of days ago. In fact, we had like gone to the park with our kids, and when it comes to our kids, it's like a really serious situation. Um, so I was kind of like confused and blindsided and really hurt and didn't understand. And I immediately in that moment, I was doing the grasping for straws, like just like begging, like, don't leave me. I can't, I can't live without you. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're my person.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was just like silence. I didn't hear from him at all, which is completely unlike us. Like, we talk every day. And so then the hurt just like kept coming. And I'm like even more confused and more hurt and just didn't understand. And now we don't live together, so it's not like I can just reach out to him. And um I had all those thoughts of like, do I go to his house, do I go to where he works, like, that whole stalker mentality like starts like sinking into your brain. And I was like, what am I going to do? I have to, this is my person, this is my future. And in the past I was kind of that person, like the chaser, like going after them and begging and just doing the whole thing that we always do. And I think it was like day 3, I found your program online, and I immediately was like, well, I don't know if I really want to go through with this. Like, I don't know if this is for me. And I was reading some of the videos, and I literally read every single article. I think there's like 600 or something like that.
600 articles. Yeah.
I read
I'm actually
all
in the
of them.
process of like redoing some of them since they're a little outdated.
Yeah.
Before we actually started reviewing or interviewing it, that's like literally what I was doing. So someone who reads 600 articles, I can barely read them myself, and I'm going through them. So that's I tip my cap to you. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was just in that desperation like phase, like, what am I going to do? How do I do this? What is
Did
he
you like
thinking?
bookmark the website or something?
Yes, I
That's
had like 2
crazy.
tabs at work. I was like working on one and then reading on another. So I
The
was just
ultimate
really,
multitasker.
I had to do something with my time.
Well, I guess that's
And
kind of a
so
productive outlet, like you're learning.
yes, yes, I was just, yeah, I was desperate
Did
and
did
I
you
didn't
do the
know.
same thing with like the videos?
Actually didn't watch them as I was reading, just because I was at work and I can't do video
Oh
and work
yeah.
at the same time.
That kind of gives away the whole, like like secretive,
Right,
like you're supposed to be working.
right. So I actually didn't start watching the videos until I got the program, and I would read and watch the video and then read the PDF, and then so that's just kind of what I was doing with my time, and I didn't realize like time was passing as I was reading. And then all of a sudden it was like a week later, and then I was in the Facebook group and people kept posting stuff, and I was like, yes, I'm with that, like I'm right there with you. I know exactly how you feel.
Right.
And I really think that the Facebook group was something that really helped me too, because seeing people go through the exact same thing I was going through, struggling with the exact same feelings I was struggling with, um, just kind of having that support system of like, okay, like I'm not crazy, like other people are doing this
This
too.
is normal.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
normal. And then just being able to also see like what other people are saying or doing that is working or not working.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Yeah, we
well,
get
I'm
a lot
not
of
going to do
that.
that.
Right, right, right.
So that was really like my goal. And then I got to the point of like the ungettable girl topic, and the way that I saw that was, he's not gonna, no one would want to be with someone that's like begging and sad and crying. Like I need to make sure that like I'm admitting this kind of secure relationship vibe out to the world, whether he sees that or someone else sees that. Like I wanted that to be me. And they say success is not linear, or grieving is not linear, or whatever is not linear, and that's exactly how it felt. Like some days I
Yeah.
was badass and I could do this and it'd be
Yeah.
fine, and then the next day I was like in my bed with the ice
Yeah.
cream.
I
Like
think that's so normal too. And it's like
it
so
is.
overlooked for a lot of people. Like everyone always thinks like it's just like one day after the next is gonna be perfect. You're gonna be like building up that ungettable mentality. But no, that it's like 2 days in a row, and then one day like something happens and you're just like
Yeah.
down in the dumps. And then you kind of have to get back up on the horse. And it just kind of is this. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And for me, it was like little triggers. Like I would find something. I have like this note that he wrote me like on my desk that I like look at all the time.
Oh
And so I
no,
was like
right. You
right
look at
there.
it, right?
And I was like, why would he write this if he didn't mean it? Like it's just
Well,
like,
yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting about the whole thing, from what I'm hearing about your situation so far, was how out of the blue it seemed. But I kind of
yes.
imagine from his perspective, it must have been percolating for a while. Like, if I'm him, I think maybe he's like having trouble. Like he has the idea, almost like I watched Inception the other day, so it's like top of mind right now. But the whole movie is about like planting an idea in this guy's
Mhm.
head, and it kind of grows
Trying to
and
grow it.
consumes him, right? So I'm
Yeah.
thinking like your ex, like when that breakup happened, because it was so out of the blue, and it was just like almost in the middle of a conversation, which is kind of
Yeah.
wild. It must have been really percolating inside and like growing until it finally bubbled up, and he just couldn't let it out anymore, or couldn't contain it anymore, and had to let it out. And I'm kind of curious, like once we get through your situation, if you actually asked him
Mhm.
like what his experience was with that, because I think that could help a lot of people who are in like a similar situation, whose exes just sort of like cold cocked him out of the
Out of
blue, you
nowhere.
know?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so we didn't talk. And I kept trying to like, I did I tried to do the social media rules where like I was posting things about myself. Like I bought
Right.
myself tickets to this art show that I've been wanting to go to for a long
Oh,
time.
that's
I
pretty
like
rad.
went out with my friends, which I'm not a big like go to a club or bar kind of person, but I went out with my friends, and
You're
then
right.
I went to like a outside concert with my parents, and like I was just like in the sun, and it was like a blues show, and it was just so relaxing. And I was in those moments, I was okay, I was fine, I was having a good time, and I felt, happy or in my zone. And so I look that way from the outside, and later on he did admit like I was stalking you, like I watched all your stuff. And I actually started during that time, I started posting, I'm like a big TikTok user, so actually started doing a daily TikTok every day of something positive, like a positive quote or a positive uplifting message, and something, and I actually started doing it for myself so that I could inspire myself or inspire others. Um and so when you do that, you can post it on all your social media. So he was seeing those videos and was like, later on he had mentioned like, I didn't know if me leaving was like a good thing for you because you just seemed so happy. And I was like, no, like sometimes, but not all the time. And my idea was just, I need to be positive and I need to have like this positive energy so that, that's what I want back. That's how I want that positive energy back. And so, and it was hard. It was definitely hard. And what initially ended up happening was, I was reading all this stuff on the Facebook group, and everyone's like, no contact, no contact, and
Mhm.
he had sent me a message like, hey, because right after the breakup, I was like, let's talk, like, let's meet for some
Right.
coffee or something. And I was
And
like,
he
let's
was
talk.
not having it.
And he was like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
So how much time had passed before this all occurs?
Probably a couple weeks, at least 3 weeks. So, I mean, I
3
was
weeks.
getting there. I
Oh,
was
it's like
getting,
21 days. That's almost
yeah,
kind of a smaller
the
little
short
no
one.
contact.
Yeah.
Right.
And he sends me this text message and he's like, I want to meet up with you, or are you open to meet up? And at first I wasn't going to reply at all because, you're not supposed to reply at all. But I was just kind of like, well, I'm actually busy next week. Like, I can't really meet with you. Which to him, and he immediately responded like, oh, well, I just want you to know that I'm available whenever you need to meet or whenever is good for you. Like, he wanted me to know he was available.
So you literally told him that you were busy, but you can meet him like next week.
Yeah, I was like, maybe next week.
That's a
Like,
pretty clever tactic.
and I did not have plans.
Of
I was just,
course. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. It's all a
Um,
game, but hey,
yeah,
he broke up with you. So hey,
that's
you
right.
can
Like,
you
you
can
can
play a
wait.
little games back.
So,
So
and that
what
was really,
happened?
really hard because I did want to talk to him. I did want to see him. I did want to say all the things I've been wanting to say. And, it was really hard to kind of play that game. And I've been journaling every day and like writing all the things down that I like want to say. And ultimately in the end, like I didn't end up saying any of those things that I had
It's
written
funny
down,
how that
but
works, isn't it? Like you
yeah.
write it all down, and you're like, okay, this is the perfect thing to say. But when you're in the moment, it's kind of like, what was that again?
Yeah, it was very interesting. So it was probably a couple days after, it was like the weekend after he had sent that text saying he wanted to meet up, and I was just sitting there in my bed journaling, and I had like this really, really strong feeling that I wanted to say something. And like you have those throughout the whole time, like you want to text, you want to call, you want to see him or whatever, but like this time it just felt really different. Like I was like, I didn't really want to say like I love you or like let's meet up. I just wanted to reach out somehow. And so I just sent a text. It was like 9 o'clock at night. And I said, just sent a text, and I was just like, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Like, and that was it. No, like, let's talk. No, like, let's have a conversation. Like, I just want you to know, like, you're on my mind kind of thing. Um, and I'm finishing journaling, and I'm sitting there in my bed journaling, and my phone goes off, which I know he's like replied to me, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer that right now, I'm just going to finish journaling. So I'm like doing everything, getting ready for bed, and I finally look at my phone, and he was like asking me about my weekend or how I was doing and that I look so happy. And I was just like, well, like, I'm just sitting here journaling, like I'm not doing anything serious. And then he said, either he said or I said, like, do you want to text right now? And I was in my head, I'm thinking, I kind of want to go to bed. so I'm like, okay, I'll text for like, I
So
was
he
like, I'll
was
text.
not your first priority. Sleep was your
No,
first priority, which is kind of
not
the beauty.
right. And so I was like, well, I'll text for a little bit, but I'm going to be going to bed soon. And so it was like small talk, like, that little value chain of like just small talk, like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? That kind of thing. And like, oh, I went to a show with my parents or whatever. And then out of the blue, he was like, can I tell you what I'm thinking right now? And I'm like, okay, like, sure. And he's like, I really just want to come over to your house and tell you what I need to tell you because there's some things I want to say to you, and then I can just leave. And I was like, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Like, I don't know, if that's really a good idea. And so I talked to my son and I was like, hey, he wants to come over. Like, how do you feel about this? And so ultimately I said, okay, well, you can come over, but we're going to stand
Sit
outside on my front
outside.
porch. You can't come in, like. And so he did. He came over. It was like 10 o'clock at night. He came over. It's like a 35-minute drive from his place. And he stood outside and he said all the things. Like he said, like, I want to be with you, I miss you, I want to like spend the rest of my life with you. I told my kids that I want to move in with you at the end of my lease. Like, I still want to marry you in 2 years, like all these things. And I'm just like, again, all the things that I'd written down just like flew out of my brain. I'm like, oh, okay, like completely shocked that this is what he's telling me, because at the time I'm expecting him to just say like, look, like this is my life, I don't really think this is where it's going or whatever. And I really like stood my ground and I was like, well, like that sounds good, like I want that too. Like, let's just, kind of see where this goes. And then he left. So like there was no like him coming inside, there was no like sleepover, like none of that. And
That's it ended abruptly and then it began again extremely abruptly.
right.
And then he just left. It's kind of like a drive-by like proposal and then he's out of it. That's
Right.
hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just sat outside and he told me all these things. And I was like, well, I've been missing you too. Like, I really want to be with you. I've been waiting for, for us to talk or whatever. And so it's kind of like we not necessarily picked up where we left off, but even in a better spot now because, we have all these plans that we're doing. Like, we've been he's been sending me houses that he's wanting to,
Well, that's
possibly go look at
exciting.
this summer. And we had
Also a little bit
dinner.
scary. Are you
Yeah.
like nervous about that?
We had talked about it before the breakup, so it wasn't completely shocking, but it was kind of like he'd gone from the like iffy, like, well, maybe to like, okay, let's look at this house. So,
Well, so what's interesting about the situation to me is mostly how it ended. Did you ever
mhm.
have an opportunity to sit down with your boyfriend and like say like what was going through your mind when you broke up with me?
So I did, and what he claimed that was going through his mind is there was something that he had been kind of struggling on a personal level that he hadn't. I guess he just was kind of scared to tell me. And instead of wanting to tell me, he just kind of was like, well, I'm just going to keep you from it. Like, I'm just going to leave you. And like,
So it's like
the,
classic avoidant approach to
oh my
the
gosh. Yeah.
is
And
is that like in line with his personality as you, is he kind of more of like an avoidant type tendencies?
yes, he is. So when we would get in a fight, he was the one that like needed space and didn't want to talk. And so I'd have to like
Okay.
sit around and wait for him to get ready to talk. Um, and then there, it is in line with his personality in that like if he's dealing with something, I'll find out like later on down the road. I'm not gonna find out
So
if he's got
he's like, I'm gonna deal with it myself. I don't need help
right.
from anyone, which is like really classic avoidant
Hmm.
attachment. Like, they're like very independent, so they feel like they can deal with their problems themselves. They don't
Hmm.
want to include anyone else to help them. And of
Hmm.
course, you seem like the kind that would love to help
I
solve problems,
know.
So it's,
Yes.
in some ways that's like an avoidance worst nightmare because they're like, no, I can do it myself, but so they
Hmm.
push you away. But it seems like I don't think this is a case of like the grass is greener where he thinks like, oh, I could find someone better. I think this is a case of like you're getting a little too close and I'm getting scared, so I'm going to push you away. And
Hmm.
then now that he's away, he starts to have like nostalgic reverie based on your past relationship and he's like,
Hmm.
oh crap, what have I done? And he regrets his decision and comes back. Do you think that's in line with what happened or is there an element that I'm missing here?
No, I mean, it sounds pretty right on. He was very like, I want to deal with this myself. But then after having some time away, he's like, I really need you. Like, I really need you in my life. Like, and, not to his own fault, but I'm the kind of person that I kind of have to put up a boundary. Like, I'm not going to do this for you. Like, you have to figure this out on your own because I want to help so hard. So that's something that I have to work on myself is, like, I want to help you, but I can't do it for you.
Well,
um,
we're always taught like I don't know about you, but I was always taught maybe from viewing my parents that like when your couples are having struggles, you help each other, right?
mhm.
And so for me, when I would start dating and date someone who had avoidant tendencies, it was almost like help, like I wanted to get in there and solve the problem. And there like it took me a long time to realize like what you said, you have to almost like stop yourself and be like, no, they have to solve the problem. And a lot of times like I'd be dating someone, they'd be crying And I'd be like, why are you crying? I'll fix it. What's wrong? And it was really hard for me to sit back and be like, I need to let them feel what they're feeling.
Mhm.
So do you feel like there was any of that where you're like me, where you're just like, no, I'm going to help solve the problem, and then just sort of like backing up and being like, no, I'm going to let them feel what they're feeling?
I am that person. I'm the like, please don't cry. Like, what can I do to help you? Like,
Right.
how do we fix this? I'm that person. And he's kind of the opposite in that, like, oh, you're crying. Like, maybe I should just give you some space.
My
um,
wife is the same way. Like uh, I don't really cry that much, but when something's bothering me, or like a classic example is when someone gets sick,
mhm.
or when my wife gets sick, if I try to help her, she's like, no, stop. But if I get sick, I'm like, no, no, come help. Like
Do all the
dote on
things.
me. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same for us too. I think in the opposite way, he wants to do it himself. He's fine by himself. Doesn't need help. But then ultimately, when you get there, you're like, okay, maybe I do need your help. Like maybe I do like want you here. And we got to the point where he admitted that he was struggling, and I said, well, I can't fix this for you, or I'm not going to fix this for you, but I'm still here. Like I'm still here for you, and you don't have to do this by yourself, even if it's just me just sitting next to you, so you're not sitting by yourself. So ultimately I think that's where we got to. It was, again, like you said, very unexpected, and in that it happened, and very unexpected in the way that we got back together too. It was I'd gotten to that point where I was like, is this ever going to happen? Like, is he ever going to reach out? It was I definitely had those moments where I didn't know for sure what was going to happen.
Well, were you ever at a point, like, emotionally? Because I hear this a lot from success stories where they get to this
Mhm.
point where they're just like, they've been through enough period of no contact without hearing from their ex. Things maybe are not going the way they were expecting, and they're sitting there and thinking to themselves, you know what? I just don't care about getting them back anymore. And they kind of like confront that reality, and they're okay with it. Was there ever a point that you got to where you felt that way?
Um, I would probably say no, just because I always, in the back of my head, I always kind of I still wanted that reach out. I still wanted him to like
Yeah.
reach out and say something, even if it was like a closure conversation.
Mhm.
But I think eventually I would have got there had we not got back together, or had not reached out to me. I think I was going on a path where um, I would have felt that eventually. I had a really good support system. My friends were always there for me. I would pick up the phone and they would answer. So um, I think had I gone like maybe another 3 months or another 6 months, like I feel like I would have got to that point.
I feel like that's a really honest answer. Because
Mhm.
the truth is, I think a lot of people, like especially at the beginning, don't get to that point emotionally. But it seems like you did a lot of behaviors that projected a more secure self than maybe he had viewed you as. Like maybe he would view you as the person who was going to eat the tub of ice cream after the breakup,
Mhm.
versus instead you're going out and doing a concert with your parents and going out with friends and posting these daily things on TikTok, or I guess across all social media platforms, and
Mhm.
you're doing, like, you look happy,
Mhm.
and so that almost like creates this narrative in his head that, like, wow, is she doing better without me? And
Yeah.
it kind of like reframes the way he thinks about you. So I think that had to have made a difference at kind of lighting the fire a little bit. I think it wasn't so much that got him to come back. I think just basically the way your breakup occurred had more to do with that than anything. But it certainly had to help that you weren't like constantly nagging about, like, well, I don't know. Did you nag at all about, like, why did you break up with me? Explain, like that, or was it more of just the approach where you're just like waiting back and seeing?
Well, I actually surprised myself because I am that person that's naggy. I in the past I would blow up his phone, I would text him, I would, call over and over and over. And so I think, like you mentioned, I think he might have expected that right away. I think as soon as the breakup happened, as soon as the breakup happened, I was that way. I was like begging, like, what are you doing? Why are we breaking up? Like, what's going on? Like, don't leave me. And
That's
then like
normal.
Right. And then right after I was like, can we talk? Like, I want to talk, like, tell me what's going on. And
Again, very
so, right
normal.
in that kind of short period right after, I was that. But then in like, I think I said like the third day or something like that, I was just kind of like looking like, how do I get my ex back?
Right.
And then I kind of started filling my time with, okay, well, what can I do different this time that obviously, in the past when I'm nagging, that doesn't work, right? So how am I going to do this different? How do I actually get him back? Like, how do I actually do that? And so I surprised myself in that, like, okay, I'm just going to be positive. I'm just going to do things for me. I'm going to like keep working out. I'm going to go with my friends. I'm going to keep doing things that make me happy so that I don't feel sad, so that I don't feel hurt. And so, because I didn't want to feel that. So it was kind of like more focused on like what's going to help me versus what's going to help me get him back. Um, and ultimately he saw that. Ultimately he saw like, oh, well, Jenny's not blowing up my phone. Like, why isn't she blowing up my phone? She's posting all these like really positive things on Facebook. Like, why does she look so happy? And he did actually make that comment of like, maybe me leaving was made you better after,
Right.
so I definitely think that had a good impact on it. Like you said, I don't think it had the reason why he came back, but it definitely had a different impact than what my previous personality would have done.
Yeah, well, I think it just is like the contrast between the two. Almost, I don't want to say there's two versions of you, but
Right.
in his mind, he's thinking like before the breakup versus after the breakup.
Hmm.
And one thing that I notice, especially with people who go through breakups, is they act exactly how you act, where they're just like, trying to understand why the breakup's occurring. Then the first few days are blowing their ex's phone up. And then really, I think the clock starts after they have those normal reactions because a lot of women and men act that way for weeks afterwards,
Hmm.
and sometimes it can get really contentious. And so when you almost like do this behavior, you create a certain standard. And if you do something to contrast that standard, it really makes a gigantic difference. So, but I think you said something incredibly insightful, which is like that stuff that you're talking about, like all the social media postings and kind of making yourself feel happy away from your ex wasn't the thing that got him back fully. And I think that's so key because the more I've been doing this, the more I realize there's not one thing that you do that gets the success. It's usually just like throwing the kitchen sink and
Right.
like we just like we know it worked, but it's like impossible to pinpoint all of these things. Plus, it seems to me it was more based on your ex's or your boyfriend now's personal situation and him
Hmm.
projecting that onto you and protecting himself more than anything that really led to sort of the chess pieces being set where they were set at the beginning of this breakup.
Right. And I looked at some of like, I'm not a big numbers person, but he is. And so sometimes I pay attention to like statistics and stuff like that. And I kept looking at like the numbers that said, if it's this kind of breakup, then this is the chance. Or if it's this kind of breakup, this is a chance. And I was like, well, I don't have that. I don't have that. So I'm
Yeah, you
like
kind of had
throwing.
like a general breakup to me, at
Mhm.
least. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a little bit of like we notice, just if you want to get numbers based, we notice that most of our clients tend to have exes that exhibit avoidant behaviors, and
Hmm.
most of our clients tend to be the anxious type
Hmm.
of behaviors. Because if you really think about it and distill it down, the people who are going to be going to Google and searching how to get your ex back are going to be people who are extremely anxious and value the relationship extremely highly. And while I think that is something to be commended, when it comes to getting this person back, you almost need to exhibit secure behaviors. And I think secure behaviors is allowing yourself time to grieve and then being like, okay, I'll be okay. And so, like, a lot of those behaviors that you're doing is sort of, I think, exhibiting that, like, I'm going to be okay. And what we find is there's almost a gravity between people who have secure behaviors. They almost like draw other people towards them. So what you find is someone like like let's use your boyfriend as an example. If he has avoidant tendencies and you are more secure, he will subconsciously begin to gravitate more towards secure behaviors on his own. So it kind of is like a way of killing two birds with one stone. You can help yourself get him back, but also help keep him once you get him back. So that's one of the really interesting things that we've noticed with attachment styles. And we've been kind of on an attachment styles kick lately. So sorry if I'm boring you with
No.
all the technical mumbo jumbo.
No, I've actually heard that before. I even ran across your program, and I had actually been looking at secure behaviors and like what that looks like, and like the different stages of relationships, and like how you get to that point eventually. Because when you're new, it's not like something that comes natural. And to your point, I was thinking during the breakup, like, what can I do now that I can continue to do if we get back together? So like, do a I'm hitting the gym like 4 or 5 days a week right now. Am I going to continue to do that if and when we get back together? I'm going out with my parents more. Like, am I going to continue to do that even after? And I told myself, yes, like I want to do these things. Like, I'm like, you don't change your schedule to meet with them. If they ask you to meet and you have plans, like you don't change your schedule. And I continue to do that. He'll want to come over. Like tonight would be a night that he would come over, but I'm going to my cousin's birthday party dinner. So like, sorry, I can't meet with you today. And in the past, I probably would have changed my schedule. Like I probably would have said, oh, well, I'll just go to the dinner late. But I'm not doing that anymore because I feel like I'll see you next time. And
Well,
so
it
that's
takes a
been
lot
a
of
change for
confidence to
me.
do that. Well, yeah, I think to your point, like just using the example of the dinner tonight or whatever,
Mhm.
like in the past, you're probably the narrative anxious people have in their heads is if I don't see him, I could lose him.
Right.
The narrative that secure people have is I will see him later, so I don't, like it's okay to push
Right.
it off another day. And I
Mhm.
think that shift for most people going through this program is an extremely difficult one to have because it requires a lot of self-confidence to like be like it's going to be okay, you know, because a lot of people don't think that, especially if they've already been proven to be in a situation where they've been hurt through a
Mhm.
breakup, that they're like on red alert all the time, so
And I definitely have that past history. I have had that where, I've been in a relationship and I go chasing and get them back, and then they leave, and then I go chasing and get them back, and it's just it and then
it's a
it's just been
circle.
this really bad cycle. And I had made it in my mind. I was like, if this is really what I want, then I have to do it differently. Like I have to do something different because all that stuff I've done in the past, it didn't work. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually really love this interview because we're getting into the stuff that really matters.
mhm,
A lot of people talk about the no contact rule and the value chain, the value ladder, and concepts like that. But the truth is, it doesn't matter if you don't have the mentality that you have, which is it's going to be okay, even if things don't go my way. And if you have that mentality when you implement that stuff, I think it works really, really well. I mean, technically, I guess you did the small talk value chain sort of
yeah.
thing,
Mhm,
but it was so disjointed because of like he asked for you back without you really even having to do a ton of work, but you did do work, whether you realize it or not. It just kind of shows you the value of show, don't tell. Yeah, I think
yeah,
some women in the Facebook group have a problem with telling their exes like how great they're doing without them.
mhm,
You showed your ex how great
yeah.
you're doing without them, and that's always more effective in my opinion.
Yeah, I think just that space really gave me with that time to do that. And you said have to get to a point where you're okay, and I did not feel okay. I
Yeah,
was definitely not okay the whole time. There was moments. So that's something that I think would help people in the future, is like you're not going to feel this like overwhelming, like I'm going to be just fine like the whole
yeah,
time. Like it comes like a little tiny bits at a time.
yeah, especially when you draw attention to it,
Mhm.
like when you're thinking about like, oh, I need to be feeling better. It's hard to feel better when
Yes.
you're just constantly obsessed about what he's doing, if he's dating someone, things like that. So
Mhm.
to your point, success is not linear.
Right. Yeah, I remember
So
sitting there with my parents and I'm like, "Oh, this is so nice. He would really like this." And then I'm like, I really like this. Just those little moments where you want them to be there, but you're okay that they're not.
Yeah, it's kind of weird too if you think about it, because it's like that whole we're taught like in relationships it needs to be about we instead of me, but
Mhm.
after you go through a breakup, it kind of needs to shift from we to me,
Right.
you know? So, but looking back, Jenny, on your whole experience of going through the breakup, going through the program, what you feel worked, what you feel didn't work, someone going through it at the beginning, what advice would you give to them?
I would definitely say don't give up. I think that was really hard for me in the beginning, is like to keep going, and you have to kind of do a little bit at a time. So for me it was, in 2 hours I'm going to text my best friend and just tell her that I feel sad if I'm feeling sad, or I'm going to text her in 2 hours I'm going to tell her however I'm feeling. um so so don't give up, and then allow time. So that one was really really hard for me. um every day is a little bit more time and a little bit more time, and that time really really makes a difference. We talk about this no contact rule, and look, when in the moment I was like, there's no way, like I can't do that, that's way too hard. And I think a lot of people have that feeling big time. I see it all the time in the Facebook group, like this is so hard, I just want to reach out. But really every day that you give it time makes the success even better, like it makes the chances of it even better. So if I was talking to me a month ago, I would just say don't give up, and like just give it time, like keep giving it time, for sure.
So that's great. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. This is a really great interview.
I appreciate it, thank you.